Hey, what's up everyone? This is Gary, and today we have another anchor standard from the tolerance outcomes. Let's get right into it. So what is justice? Justice can be looked at as privilege. Justice can be looked at as discrimination. Justice can be looked at as stereotypes. As usual, let's look at Google for what they say the definition might be. Just behavior or treatment. A concern for justice, peace, and genuine respect for people. Synonyms include fairness, justness, fair play, mindedness, equity, lack of bias, lack of prejudice, open-mindedness, some other word I can't read. So, within this standard, we're going to look very closely at discrimination, stereotypes, and privilege. And I'll be honest, some people say that these words are only for adults. I say they're for everyone. Justice in itself, similar to what I said before, are connected to a number of different words. Some of those words include bias, discrimination, stereotypes, and prejudice. When we talk about justice, we want to look at justice in a number of different ways. For starters and your students, you can think about it as, when must one take action? When does one simply maintain and not engage? What does it mean to be fair and unfair? And what does justice look like in relation to people and human rights? Below, you will find an activity from tolerance.org that simply asks you to respond within 15 to 20 seconds to the word that you see. Let's give it a try for a second. I'm gonna give you 15 to 20 seconds to write down your thoughts and opinions about a words that I show on the screen. Don't worry, I'll wait. I'll give you some time to go grab something to write on. All right, so we're back. So let's try. I'll give you a word, I'll wait, and then I'm gonna ask you to write down your thoughts. You can do this with your students, and it's also a great activity to do for you and your colleagues. The first word is Muslim. The second word is Christian. The third word is Asian American. The fourth word is Baptist. The idea of this lesson is for you to start to notice some of the things about yourself, your beliefs, or ideas about others. And it's okay. I think a large part of all of this work that we are doing and why it is so important is because we need to start to identify our biases, our stereotypes, our discriminations against other people before we are able to teach this kind of work to our students. The idea about this lesson is that you are noticing your feelings about others. And ultimately, this is okay. We are not perfect. Our students are not perfect. We need to be comfortable being uncomfortable. When we do this work on justice, stereotypes come up. The idea of stereotypes without actually using the definition is going to come about. Students are going to be stereotyping. You may possibly be stereotyping. And this is another word we can use as an inquiry to what it means, how does it impact other people. It is important, listen carefully. It is very, very important that we look at this word very, very carefully. We need to understand our meaning and all of the thoughts around stereotypes. Stereotypes, 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 stereotypes. Stereotypes, stereotypes, stereotypes. A study was done at Duke University from a number of professors. What they found out is that there are also something called positive stereotypes. And this is what they found. It is said that females and black children early on in development, they quickly, very, very quickly accept positive stereotypes. For females, it's reading and writing. They're said to believe that reading and writing stereotypes are positive. Black children, it's sports. They often say that black children at a very young age and growing up are good at sports. On the other end of that, women are also often affected by the idea of technology, science, and engineering. We often put them in a category of not being able to compete with the males, who often dominate those professions. And all so-called positive stereotypes don't all sit well with those specific groups. Asian Americans, for example, are often considered to be extremely smart and good at math. And of course, this is a feeling that one would like to feel or be called, but at the same time, it can develop stress and anxiety for the individual. And for someone who is black and who doesn't like sports, that can be a lot of pressure. What if you're not athletic? What if you don't like sports? What if you just like art? The expectation from the outside world is that you've played sports before, or you are very good or very athletic. Stereotypes need to be taught in a sense where they can be seen as both positive and negative. It is extremely important that we understand that justice cannot be taught without talking about stereotypes, discrimination, privilege, bias, and prejudice. It just can't. It just can't happen. A great way to start this work, and I guess it depends on the age, also the content that you're presenting. We can look at LGBT, you can look at Jim Crow. All of these have serious connections to justice. A game that we played this year in our classroom, 3rd grade, was a privilege game. And before that, I'd like to shout out my instructional assistant for introducing me to the game.
Thanks, Miss Zuby.
Basically, the class is split up into 2 different groups. The 2 groups are given cards, and then they are told a scenario. Basically, this is how it works. There's been this big natural disaster, and it's left all of these people stranded on an island. On this island, there is a boat, and this boat can only hold X number of people. These people come from all walks of life, different religions, they come from different race, they come from different privileges. Students are given cards to look at with these different people on them. They must decide which people deserve to be on the boat and survive. The boat can only have X number of people. If you're interested in this game, I put a link below for you to check it out. Another game I really like to play, and I don't really have a name for it, but for now, let's just call it privilege game number 2. What you do is you ask all of your students to basically come to the carpet or sit at a desk. In front of them, you put a garbage can. You also give them a piece of paper. You give them the piece of paper and you ask them to crumple it up into a ball. You then tell them that they are all citizens of this society. They have a chance to be very wealthy. You put the garbage can in front of the group, and then you ask them to throw the paper into the garbage can. But the people in the back, the people in the middle, and the people in the front cannot move. The idea is that many of them are going to miss because they're further in the back. But those of who are closer are obviously going to make it. The idea is that you are explaining to students how this idea of wealth and privilege happens every single day. Another important aspect of this is how we talk to students about using their privilege to help others and how this should continue throughout their entire life. Here are the 5 standards for justice. Students will recognize stereotypes and relate to people as individuals rather than representatives of groups. Students will recognize unfairness on the individual's level, biased speech, and injustice at the institutional or systematic level. Example, discrimination. Students will analyze the harmful impact of bias and injustice on the world, historically and today. Students will recognize that power and privilege influence relationships on interpersonal, intergroup, and institutional levels and consider how they have been affected by those dynamics. Students will identify figures, groups, events, and a variety of strategies and philosophies relevant to the history of social justice around the world. Like all of these standards and outcomes, I strongly believe it always goes back to the text that we are using. How are we implementing text, the literature within our classrooms to bring out these ideas and these questions? For math, how are we using problem solving to help students realize the connection between justice? All of these things need to be a lot more transparent in the classroom. When students are able to start to recognize their own privilege, that is when the real work has begun. And to even go deeper than that, when teachers are able to understand their privilege and their biases as well. And it's important. Students should be looking looking at systematic discrimination and patterns of behavior. They're ready. They should be looking at trends and practices that continue to stay the same, but yet might still feel a little unjust or unfair. What things are in place right now continue to put different groups of people at a disadvantage. And lastly, don't forget your focus when talking about justice. Again, students need to be introduced to privilege, discrimination, and stereotypes. Privilege, discrimination, and stereotypes. Students need to come up with their own definition of justice and how it affects their world. Until next time, peace.